In fishing for fantasy, we look at those waiver wire pickups. For those of you that can't see, Zach is doing a sort of fishing thing with his hands right now. Fantastic.
Not
Um,
super great. I was never a great fisher, but I'm good at fantasy. Don't ask
so
my fantasy colleagues that though. That disagree with you.
we're going to look for some players that are not widely owned that you'll be able to either stash or immediately start. Going first with quarterbacks, a little bit of a surprise. A player who is mostly from a defensive team. I'm going to, of course, stan him because he's a Panthers player, but Sam Darnold. So Sam Darnold is only owned in 9% of leagues, and he's not the best, but he's 9% ownership, and he is currently sitting at quarterback number 11 as far as points go. Now, granted, he hasn't played some of the best teams, but chances are, especially if you're in a deeper league, a 12-person league, he's probably better than who you have on your bench right now. So he might be worth the stash. We'll see where it goes. If Panthers maybe get a little bit more passing because they lose out on Christian McCaffrey, and so he tries passing those talented receivers a bit more, could end up in catastrophe, but also could result in some big fantasy numbers.
And I don't disagree with you. His passing volume is already for him at an all-time high. And if they continue to bump that up, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, although I'm not a believer, I think that he could surprise a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
and on volume alone and efficiency
Yep.
alone really make a difference. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna talk about another Panther, this time at running back. Number one running back pickup this week. I don't care who's telling you not to do it on Twitter. Chuba Hubbard. You pick him up. He's taking over for Christian McCaffrey. I get it. He's not Christian McCaffrey. He's a more momentum-based runner. But I was really high on Chuba, 2 years ago, especially after that 2,000-yard season. Last year, it didn't have a great year, but nobody had a great year last year. It's 2020, man,
Mm-hmm.
COVID. So, I don't really fully blame him for everything that occurred last year. But I think that Chuba is still a very talented runner. Never a great pass catcher, but he'll still catch a couple passes. Definitely a decent flex position play at the very least, maybe even an RB2 play if you're struggling
Mm-hmm.
at running back, like a lot of people are right now.
Last year, I actually went 17-0 in one of my fantasy leagues, and I attribute my success to two big waiver pickups I had. One was Myles Gaskin of the Dolphins, and the other
Mm,
one was Mike Davis of the Panthers. And the
yeah.
reason for that is the Panthers, knowing they have Christian McCaffrey, build a team that's very centric around their running back, not only getting carries, but also getting short passes frequently. When they put their backups in, they stay true to that identity. So anyone who is a backup running back who then gets full reps for Panthers will be in consideration for a lot of fantasy points. Mike Davis had me some big games last year. I think Chuba has potential for the next 3 to 4 weeks while McCaffrey's out.
Oh, yeah.
However, we do need to talk about those running back baits. Two running backs this week who you might look at and say, 23 points? Who is this guy? Peyton Barber of the Raiders and Alexander Madison of the Vikings. Now you might think, well, if this guy got 23 points, wow, he must be really good. He's a breakout player. I should pick this guy up right now. I should drop someone off my bench and get him right now. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't do
Both
it.
of these guys are starting because and only because of injuries to starters. Josh Jacobs is the starter for the Raiders, and Dalvin Cook obviously is the
Yeah.
starter for the Vikings.
No
So,
question about that.
yes, these guys had 2 great weeks. They both got 23 points. Once Josh Jacobs and Dalvin Cook return, which is expected to be next week, their performance, their volume, and their efficiency, all of that gone. It will vanish just completely overnight. Bye-bye.
We we're on the same page with that, Robbie and I. If for some reason either of those guys miss another week that that these guys are backing up, obviously, 1 week stash, but I think you'd
Mm-hmm.
be better off using your waiver wire acquisition on somebody else anyway, somebody
Yeah.
more long term. So definitely bait. Now we're going to talk about some wide receivers, and you guys are about to hear about my favorite wide receiver of all time, Mr. Josh Gordon, Mr. Weedman himself. He is one of my favorite players of all time. And I think a lot of it has to do with the struggles that he has had. And it also has to do with a very dear friend of mine who is unfortunately no longer with us, who used to beat me with Josh Gordon in fantasy every week. And I could not get over it because he would always take him first. It was during that 2013 season when Josh Gordon had an unreal season, 1,600 yards in 14 games. So this could be the only time I ever get to shout out Josh Gordon. Whether or not he gets suspended again, whether or not he plays to his potential that he used to have, I don't think that those things are necessarily going to happen. I do think that a 30-year-old receiver who has stayed athletic, regardless of being out of the league, for a majority of his career, a guy who stays in shape and does what he does and is going to the Chiefs, because that's where he's going, is a great Hail Mary. If you have somebody at the end of your bench that you can stash on your IR, or you have somebody that you're holding on to that, you think, oh, maybe this guy could be a decent hold for us, I promise you, Josh Gordon will have all the potential in the world to do that as well. He could easily be an end-of-the-bench guy who becomes a league winner. Do I believe it? I'm always going to believe it, baby. I love Josh Gordon. That's my guy. I stan Josh Gordon like Robbie stands, I don't know.
The Panthers.
The Panthers. Yeah. I was just like, who does Robbie like other than the Ravens? Yeah. Like Rob stands the Panthers. I stan Josh Gordon, and I will never stop. So I would recommend a pickup for him. Do not get mad at me if he gets suspended again. That is your fault for getting tricked, not mine. I will stay willfully ignorant.
So another wide receiver that you may want to consider is Hunter Renfrow. Now, he is still only rostered on 3.3% of leagues. He is just a free agent almost everywhere. And so far, he has 3 double-digit performances against 3 allegedly strong defenses. I believe it's the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Dolphins. Those are supposed to be good defenses. Has this year played out that way? Not necessarily.
No.
Those are teams that historically have had good defenses, at least in the past year or two. And he has done very well against them. I mean, double-digit points in 3 weeks, that's consistency. I like to see consistency. Sometimes you say, hey, the only way that I win, I got to play to my outs. I need someone to drop 20, 30. Hunter Renfrow, probably not your guy. But so far, he has consistently got double digits. If you're saying I need 10, 11, 12, I'm playing against a person who's not doing as well. I just need consistency and someone to not drop a dud. It's looking like he's your guy. Another mention is Tim Patrick is also a consideration for the same reason. He's only held in 8.3% of leagues. He's gotten a lot of play since Jerry Jeudy's injury. He is actually performing better than Hunter Renfrow. He's also double digits in all 3 of his games, a couple more points, so a little bit better, but it's important to remember that Jerry Jeudy is not out for the year, so if you need a quick pickup for the next 3-4 weeks to be potentially dominant wide receiver, get those between 12 and 15 points a game, Tim Patrick may be a good pickup. Just remember, it's not going to last.
We'll go ahead and switch over to tight end. We didn't really have a lot of options this week. The tight end is such like a wasteland of a position outside of the top 5 guys. And even the top 5 guys, 2 of them, Kittle has struggled up until this week. And Hawkinson, who had 2 really strong weeks, had kind of a bad week. So you never know what you're going to get at tight end outside of with Travis Kelce. And that's it. Because even Darren Waller has been inconsistent after that 20 target week 1. But we wanted to have somebody in here anyway, so we're going to go ahead and say Dawson Knox. He finally seems to be like maybe he's growing that connection with Josh Allen a little bit. I get it that the numbers aren't quite there. And also take what I say with a grain of salt, because Juwan Johnson was a guy that I also was really excited about. But I will say I'm not super excited about Dawson Knox. I actually had Dawson Knox in a couple of dynasty leagues, and I traded him because I didn't really expect a lot from him. But if you have nobody at tight end, if you've got guys who are hurt, if you waited until the 13th round to draft a tight end and realized, wow, what did I do? Dawson Knox is as good of a dart throw as anybody else with that quarterback back there.
And I do want to point out, with regards to Hawkinson, for those of you that did not watch the Ravens-Lions game, the Ravens basically said, your team is untalented, and we know this, and we're going to double cover Hawkinson all game. So the reason that he had a bad game was because he was effectively double covered, and the Ravens were devoting almost all their resources to trying to stop DeAndre Swift. That's the name, right? DeAndre?
Yeah,
DeAndre Swift?
DeAndre Swift.
He's a monster. Like, he's so talented. He is so hyper talented. Almost all of the Ravens' defense was focused on stopping Hawkinson and Swift, and the Lions don't really have the other weapons to compensate for that. So if other teams catch on and they start doing that same strategy of double teaming Hawkinson, that will be a problem. Otherwise, he still start. Don't panic. Interesting that I talk about the Lions, because this week for the defensive pickup in fantasy, this is going to shock you. It shocked me when I wrote it. I still don't know if I entirely believe it, but the Lions defense may be the start for this week. I know that
just this week.
I know that goes against everything of the moral fabric of the NFL and everything that we know about the NFL. You never, ever, ever do that ever. This week may be the one exception. The Bears look not only bad, but like laughably bad on offense. They are in full-blown self-destruction. They looked bad week 1 and week 2 with Dalton, but Dalton at least kept them afloat. Fields isn't ready. He's just not ready. He had under 33% completion. Under 1/3 of his passes were completed. It's really bad. And he ate 9 sacks. That's where your points come in when you're playing on defense. It's sacks, because every single time you get a sack, you get that 1 point. And when you're getting pressure on a quarterback, the quarterback is more likely to make big mistakes like fumbles and interceptions. Those can possibly turn into touchdowns. I think a lot of defense starts with the defensive line when you're looking for defenses in fantasy. And right now, the Bears are looking so bad that the Lions might be a 1-week defense fill-in. Now, I want to add a little bit of an asterisk here, that if Andy Dalton returns, they will be slightly less anemic. The Lions defense isn't good enough to warrant like a favorable matchup. They need an extremely favorable matchup for you to put them in. And right now, based on what we saw in week 3, looks extremely favorable. And more importantly, I don't think the Bears are physically capable of putting up a lot of points. And so I don't think it'll be a problem of them getting like 0, -1, -4, whatever your league is playing with. I don't think the Bears are physically capable, so it's a safe bet at worst, in my opinion, and there's some big upside.
Yeah, agreed on that. Also, Justin Fields, he was a guy who fell in the draft a little bit later than everybody expected him to, but when watching him in preseason, one of the biggest things that I noticed, and I just wish we would have done this podcast now in the preseason, because I would have had so much more commentary, but I was in Portugal and in New Orleans and you were in Maine. So obviously it couldn't work out, but Justin Fields lacks pocket presence right now, alarmingly. And when you combine that with an offensive line that's not going to give him the time of day, it doesn't matter how good of a runner he is. He's not going to be able to avoid anybody. No matter how bad that defensive line is, they're still professionals. The Lions defense compared to the Bears offense really might look just like really unwatchable football. So the Lions defense, I think, at least has the opportunity to, like you said, put up some numbers, make fantasy owners feel a little bit good this week going into it. If there's going to be anybody who, once again, has like a Hail Mary that they need, Lions could be that team. They really could.
If Fields starts, the Lions defense starts.
Yep, exactly right.
I think that's all that we had planned for today.
Yeah, I was going to say, put a little cap on that, Go ahead and
we hope you all enjoyed the day. We enjoyed the games this past weekend. There were a lot of crazy plays like that. The Cardinals punt, fumble, so many crazy things. We're excited because basically every single weekend we're just seeing crazy things, and that makes our job so easy. Like writing these, like a script and a general outline for an episode is so easy when just wacky things happen. So please keep up the wackiness, keep up the weirdness, and just we love unexpected things. We really do.
We do. It's like you said, it makes things a lot easier for us. And honestly, I think it's just great to be an NFL fan
Yeah.
right now with all the stuff that's been happening. You expect to see early in the season some crazy stuff, but I think we're seeing more crazy stuff than we ever have. So, thank you guys so much for, like we said earlier, those downloads and actually listening to us and paying attention and giving feedback. That's one of the best things that you guys can do.
Hmm.
If you guys like us, please subscribe, download the podcast, continue to let us know what you think. I think Rob and I we're intending on kind of expanding this a little bit more here pretty soon. Maybe get some guest interviews on. I haven't cleared it with him yet, but I think it would be a great idea.
We're in talks. We're in talks.
Yes, for sure. So, it's like it, subscribe to it. Let us know what you think. Check out our YouTube. You can find both of us on socials, both of us on Facebook at least. And then I'm on everything because I'm, a degenerate when it comes to my social media usage. So, if you guys want anything out of us, let us know. Otherwise, we're so appreciative of you.
Yeah. Thank you guys all so much for listening. We'll see you again next week.